Ms. Nouy, thank you and welcome to our committee, and thank you indeed for your presentation. I wonder, could you clarify, in terms of the stress testing that would occur next year, in the first quarter of next year, how many banks will be tested? I think some figure between 50 and 60. Could you give some clarity to the committee on that? And secondly, in the selection of those banks that will be tested again, will it be a selection of those banks that came through the stress test last year, and a selection of those banks where capital inadequacy was highlighted as a consequence of the stress test? Will it be a selection of both? Are those banks which had still to raise capital, will they be excluded? And it brings me to one of those banks in the Irish situation, the Permanent TSB that you have spoken about before this committee. There was a gap of about 850 million as a consequence of the first stress test, and since then significant funds have been raised, and also its plan for restructuring has gone through the Commission. What happens next for Permanent TSB and indeed other banks in that category? Is it the case that you will constantly monitor the balance sheets of that and other banks? And will the SSM monitor the Permanent TSB in terms of how it would cope in a crisis or a stressed environment were such a situation to emerge again? Thank you.
Thank you. Regarding the EBA stress test, there is no definitive sample and number of banks. What we have been told, but again, it's not yet decided, is that we should consider having 70% about of banking assets under a stress test. In order to reach this percentage, you have to go for pretty big banks. And especially, we would like to be the SSM considered one territory because we are a single supervisory mechanism with a single supervisor. So in this case, even more so, to get the 70%, we need to start with the big banks. Nevertheless, the banks that will not be picked up as in the EBA stress test will have some kind of stress test under the SSM in non-public fashion and with proportionality, but part of the methodology, the threat methodology, is using stress tests to assess the need for capital requirements. So 50 to 60 banks for the SSM is a reasonable size of the sample that we will be asked by EBA to use to get this about. It's more than about, it's above 70%. Nothing is fixed, but it should be this magnitude. And for the others, they will be discreetly, because it will not be under the spotlight, it will not be a public exercise, but they will be part of the SSM stress test. As all the banks supervised by the SSM, yes, probably based on the size, well, probably under the SSM stress test. But again, I speak without my notes on data, so I don't know. But with what I had told you, you should be able to see.
Thank you.